What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 17 top 15 tight end rankings. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Like I talked about in my quarterback video, I do think it's important for you guys to trust your gut this week. Obviously, I'm putting out these rankings, worked hard on them, but if a couple guys are close and you have a strong gut feeling, I do think you should trust yourself this week. But let's just dive right into the rankings here. Starting off in tier 1, I feel like this has kind of turned into a pretty consistent top 4. Obviously, the order kind of switches up, but we're going to start off with George Kittle going up against the Lions. Been a pretty consistent option, really only had a couple of down games. He's put up 14 plus points in 10 of his 13 matchups and has put up 18 plus in 7 out of 13. So in more than half his games, he's scoring 18 plus. I think it's very fair to have him here as the tight end 1. And as long as the Niners continue to play their starters, he's going to be a must-start option. Then I have Brock Bowers going up against the Saints. As a rookie, he is leading all tight ends in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and yards after catch. The issue for Brock Bowers is never going to be like a talent issue. It's just going to be like, can his offensive environment support him every single week? I do think in a softer matchup here against the Saints, he's obviously going to be a strong play. I mean, he's a must-start regardless of matchup, but I do think this could be one of his bigger games here going up against New Orleans. Then I'm going to go with Trey McBride going up against the Rams. And I mean, he just went out, had a very underwhelming Week 16, looked like just such a safe play with the consistent volume he was getting. His previous 4 games before Week 16, he was averaging 12.8 targets per game. Week 16, only 4 targets, 3 for 20, not great. But I'm not going to let that one game scare me off of 4 straight, just insanely impressive, high volume weeks. I'm going right back to the well here on Trey McBride. And then my last guy in this tier, Jonnu Smith, going up against the Browns. In his last 6 games since he started to break out, he's averaging 17.8 points per game and getting consistent volume with 8.5 targets. Jalen Waddle's banged up. Tyreek Hill hasn't been super impressive. Jonnu Smith has been a legit weapon for this Dolphins team, and he is going to close out tier 1 for me. Now, looking at tier 2, going to start off with Sam Laporta going up against the Niners. Laporta was, pretty much the tight end 1 or the tight end 2 off the board, and he's been pretty miserable to roster throughout almost this entire season, but it seems like he's starting to put it together, over the last few weeks here. He has scored in double digits in his last 4 games. The last 3, he's actually getting volume, which is great to see. 24 targets in his last 3 games. So on this Lions offense, they're going to put up points. He's going to have that touchdown upside. If he can get somewhat of a volume floor, that's going to be huge for him. So he is going to be my tight end 5. After Laporta, going to go with David Njoku going up against the Dolphins. And somehow David Njoku just continues to produce. Kind of a miracle. He was able to get 8 for 66 in a DTR game, but he was still targeted 10 times. He looks like at this point, the weapon that's going to be most quarterback proof here, where, Jameis Winston gets benched. It's going to be a hit to all these guys, but Jerry Jeudy, his production completely fell off. David Njoku still delivered a fine game, so he's going to stick around in tier 2 for me. Then I have Mark Andrews going up against the Texans in his last 4 games, kind of similar to Laporta, someone who looked completely unplayable early on. And it's not like he's racking up a ton of volume, but he just continues to get into the end zone. In his last 4, he's averaging 14.7 points per game, and he is tied for first in the NFL in the touchdown department. Now moving into tier 3, going to start off this tier with Tucker Kraft going up against the Vikings. Tucker Kraft is not going to command a ton of targets. He is 19th at the tight end position in targets, but he is going to make the most of those opportunities. So 19th in targets, but he is 3rd in touchdowns. He is 5th in yak, and he is number 2 in yards per target and yards per reception. So he's going to be efficient. He's going to have that touchdown upside. I think he's a nice mid to back end tight end 1 play. Then I have Travis Kelce going up against the Steelers. And Kelce's kind of had an underwhelming start to the season. Then he strung together a couple, maybe 2, 3 really impressive games in the middle of the season. And then his last 6 have just not been great. Under 14 PPR points, 6 straight weeks. He is 2nd in targets, but is just not getting into the end zone. Has not been efficient on those opportunities. I believe he only has 2 touchdowns, which is 21st at the tight end position, which on that kind of volume, on a decent offense with the Chiefs, kind of a tough break for him. Then I have Hunter Henry going up against the Chargers. Just continues to be a solid option with Drake May at quarterback, 11.3 points per game in full Drake May performances. And then a guy potentially making his debut on these rankings altogether, Okonkwo going up against the Jaguars. Okonkwo was someone who a lot of people were kind of hyped on heading into last season, where as a rookie, he was super efficient. Like his per route numbers looked great. The question was, could he kind of step into a larger role? Didn't really happen. This year, he had pretty much been a non-factor. Then out of nowhere, in his last two games, like fantasy playoffs hit, Okonkwo was balling out. In his last two games, 21 total targets. He's caught 17 of those for 140 yards. It's a softer matchup here against the Jaguars, which, makes me somewhat willing to play these Titans weapons. And at this point, right, the tight end position behind him isn't super strong. If you can get someone that's had double-digit targets in back-to-back weeks, like that is playable in my opinion. I know I'm in a league where like my tight end position is not good. I'm strong everywhere else, but I've been rolling with like Zach Ertz and Kyle Pitts. Like I scooped up Okonkwo and I'm going to be playing him this week. The volume's there. You're just hoping it can continue for a third straight game. And then moving into tier 4, going to go with Dalton Schultz going up against the Ravens, someone who on the season as a whole has been very disappointing, but his last 3, he started to show a little something, 17.1, then 3.3, back up to 15.5. I guess you're just kind of hoping with the Tank Dell injury that he could be like the number 2 target here and have some upside against the Ravens. Then I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson going up against the Packers. Just straight up has not been like super fantasy relevant since returning from injury. Probably someone who you've started or have at least started a couple of times, but he's averaging 9 points per game through 8 weeks. It's a pretty large sample size, and it's not like he's gaining, right? He didn't have like a super slow start, and then now he's starting to pick up his performances. It's just been like overwhelmingly pretty not great. So TJ Hawkinson outside my top 12. Then I have Pat Freiermuth going up against the Chiefs. In his last 4, he had 3 nice games in a row, 18.8, 13.8, 11.2, fell down to 4.6 PPR points. He does seem to be pretty touchdown or bust. Not someone who's going to rack up a ton of volume. Plus, you have George Pickens coming back this week. So not a great play, but, had a few nice weeks in a row. Could do worse. And then my tight end 15 is going to be Jake Ferguson going up against the Eagles. Had a nice week 16, 9 targets, 6 for 40. And then I will give an honorable mention to Zach Ertz. Week 16, came back from the concussion, had a nice roll, ran 37 routes. The dude just commanded 0 volume, only 2 targets on those 37 routes, which is not good, but he's going to be on a decent offense. They're favored, could put up some points. Ertz has been somewhat relevant throughout this season, but that is going to wrap it up for my top 15. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. Good luck this week. Hope you guys bring home that fantasy championship. Like I've talked about, probably going to be my last video, I guess, of the 2024 season. But if you do have questions later on in the week, I will continue to answer them. And if you guys are interested in off-season content, I'll continue to make videos, rookies, draft, some dynasty stuff, and then obviously gearing into next season. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.